Hey everyone, how are you? My name is Alex, and welcome to a brand new series called Build Plus. Build Plus is a series in which I examine things that are not in vanilla Minecraft that I feel could be added to vanilla Minecraft. And the way that we'll be examining that is I will go into the game in vanilla in creative mode and build those things the way that I think they probably could look vanilla and integrate into the vanilla gameplay. And one thing that I've really wondered about is why a Mesa village does not exist in Minecraft. And I did try to do my research. I couldn't really find a clear answer as to why this does not exist in vanilla Minecraft, so everything you see here is based on my imagination. And that's okay. So we're going to go through every part and piece and examine why I created these things the way that I did. Before we begin, if you enjoy this video, you can show support by leaving a like, and if you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell. This helps me out and keeps me bringing great content to you. Thanks so much, and let's get right into it. The first thing that I tackled with this village was placement. Should it be on a coastline, like the one you see here? Should it be on a Mesa island, like the one that you see here, which is actually a really nice looking island? And in the end, I actually decided to go with a coastline because I felt that this placement would make the most sense in a desert environment. The very first step before I did any building of buildings was actually flattening the terrain partially so that I could build on a somewhat flat surface, but I was still very careful with this because I wanted to stay within the vanilla and vanilla plus style without making this look like something that was totally made in creative mode. The next step was choosing the materials I would actually build with, and I did go with red sandstone, but I also decided to go with some hardened clay. And you'll see why soon. So, I really wanted granite to be a featured material in this village, as sort of like something that made the Mesa village a little bit different from other vanilla villages without it being too different. So I thought it would be really important to incorporate that into the village center. Additionally, I thought really long and hard about what I wanted the center to actually be, and the reason I chose a tree is because we actually have trees in Mesa biomes, and once I had that sorted out, which really didn't take me very long, I got started on the paths. So we have this one path over here and then the other one going off to the right, and these paths really are what I'll be building all of the buildings up against. The important thing about this building, in comparison to the others that I make later on, is that this was the first building, and I did want it to be a house. I knew that much going into it, but there wasn't much else that I knew at that point beyond I wanted it to be colorful to a certain extent, and I wanted these chiseled blocks to also be incorporated to give the village kind of a culture, in a sense, because all of the vanilla villages seem to have a little bit of culture in them. And I wanted that to be incorporated without going too far and too fantasy-like. So that's what I started doing. And by the time I had built the second yellow wall, I really decided that I liked having the yellow hardened clay, and that was definitely something that would be used quite often with a lot of these buildings. And so things are about to change in a second, though, because these chisel blocks, I realized that when I was going to do the roof, if they were up that high on the corners, they wouldn't be seen, therefore there would be no point to having them there. So I ended up moving them down, as you see here. And I think this looks a lot better, but I also think it makes the building really interesting and really modular. So it gives it... I kind of imagined a player wanting to go here because these blocks are available. It doesn't mean you can't make them, yourself, but it's still nice to be able to come to a village and see something that catches your eye and makes it interesting and a place to go to. So that was a bit of my thought process behind it. I did want the roof to be very simplistic, a basic stair roof, nothing too exciting about it. Just kind of keep it simple and easygoing, something that you could replicate yourself if you wanted to. So that's basically how the roof became the roof. And just top it off like that. So I started trying do I want the granite? And then I was like, I don't think I want the granite. It's kind of a bit too contrasty. There's something about it that just doesn't look right. So then I stuck in the green and I was like, ooh, now we're getting interesting. So then that happened right there. And that's the point in which I knew, okay, I think I know how I want to do this, because this is very much fitting into my modular style when I build creative builds, but it's also still fitting into vanilla. And I really liked this style. To me, this made it look very... there's just something about it that just fits into the Mesa. It incorporates the color of the Mesa, and that's really what I wanted. Finally, I decided to finish off the building with doing a basic hardened clay floor. And then I came inside and I decided that something that would make this village a bit more exciting to go to in comparison to just a standard village that has torches in it would be to incorporate lanterns instead. And I felt like that would be a lot of fun because, again, it would give this a bit more interest, but also it would give you, as a player, a reason to come here without this being, absolutely ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? Something that would still make it plausible for vanilla Minecraft. So that was my basic thought process behind that. I decided that this house would be another farmhouse, and I wanted it to be the exact same as the first house that I built. And that was also because at that point in time, I really hadn't decided what I wanted the medium and larger houses to look like yet, so I decided to go with what I already knew how to do and stick with that. At this point in time, I was becoming really invested in the 3x3 village house. And so I really wanted it to be this connected house. There were two separate houses, but they had a connection between them. So while I was working that out in my brain, I was also thinking about the styling of it and what colors I wanted to incorporate. And one thing that I remembered was, classic Minecraft villages before the 1.14 update, they had some 3x3 houses that had that unique flat roof instead of the triangular roof that was made out of the stairs. And one thing that they also had was a ladder going up to the roof. And at that point, I started thinking to myself, okay, I'll have a ladder going up to the roof, and that will allow villagers to go up that ladder, and then they can go from one roof to the other roof and go down into the other house. Why they need to do that, I have no idea. But that was what I was thinking, and I just thought it would look really fun. It would almost make it sort of look like it was some kind of parkour map or something, but still within the realm of vanilla Minecraft. I mean, I was also kind of thinking back to these old builds that I did with desert maps years and years and years ago, and that influenced me a bit here too, because I have this really, really old video here on my channel of this desert village that I made, and there was a RPG parkour-ish component to it, and I was thinking very heavily about that while I was doing this. So that's how this happened in my head. And it was a lot of fun to make this little thing. I kind of feel like it's very castle looking, but once I got the other components and the other decorations into this, then I felt a lot better about it. And it was so much fun. And I really like having these, this gray and purpley magenta coloring. I'm really, really happy with this one. I've decided to slow down this clip significantly so that we can actually take a moment to talk about what I did here. Incorporating the walls as well as the acacia wood, I felt like really made this particular build come together. They're two separate buildings, but they have that acacia trapdoor bridge between them, so the villager goes up the ladder inside the house, goes to the roof, and then they can walk across. And I have actually seen the villagers that I place in this village later on actually do this, and it is just the funniest looking thing. This medium house is something that in the beginning when I first made it, I really was not happy with it, and I spent a lot of time tweaking this. But it really grew on me, and I think the final result is really what it should be if it's ever added to vanilla Minecraft. Not that I think my Mojang will use my ideas, but if they did, I really do think this should be added in, because it gives this a structural component that ties it in with the town center, with the granite, but it also makes it look like it's a solid building. There was just something about this that once I sat on it for a little while, I actually really liked. And I'm very curious what you guys will have to say in the comment section about it, because I'm very curious what you think, because even though I am happy with it now, that can change. I'm sure that there is something that you guys are noticing that I'm not noticing. So I went with the yellow for this one, because even though I used the magenta and the gray for the other unique building, I wanted to go back to the yellow. I didn't want every single house to have different colors. You know, similar styling, but not different colors, because then that would just not work. That would not be cohesive. And every village, even though it has its own unique style, it still has a modular set style to it. Something that makes it like, oh yeah, that's what a tundra village looks like, or oh, that's what a taiga village looks like. And I felt like it was really important for me to stick to those vanilla rules, so that's what I did. And there was so much thinking that went into this one in particular. So much thinking. I kind of hurt my brain a little bit while I was working on this house, but this is basically like the way that I started with it, and it is surprisingly modular for what it is. The granite. This was a part of this that was interesting for me, because like I loaded this up with the granite and I was like, oh no, that's bad. Don't do that, Alex. Don't put so much of that in there. It just looks like black vomit. So I was like, that looks terrible, but I love the purpley pink color. We got to keep it in there. So I kept it, and I do very much like it a lot. I think it gives this build this structural look, like as if these granite parts are actually holding it together. That it's like this big, heavy stone roof. It's this blocky, heavy building that has something to do with structure and building things. And in my head, this was meant to be a stonemason. And you will see that I put in a blast furnace, which is not what the stonemason uses. The stonemason uses a stone cutter. But a blast furnace ends up in here, and that was not my intent. That's not what I wanted to have happen. I immediately did not like that. I felt like it was too chunky and weird, so I went with what I had done with the double building, the two buildings that are separate but connect, and I liked this styling much better. I felt like this just worked so much better for that space. So I didn't want to do one on like every single window, and instead I did something different. But as you can see here, I'm putting in the blast furnace that has no business being in this building whatsoever. Like, it has no right to be in here. Like, I love the way that fireplace looks, but it's just wrong for what I intended this building to be. Yeah, I built this, like, little awning thing here in front of this window as just, like, a character thing, and I was like, okay, it's done. And I kind of feel like it almost looks like it should be in a trailer park, but that's okay. Moving on from the very interesting medium stonemason that's not a stonemason building, I came over here to do an animal pen. And I really hadn't decided at this point in time when I was doing the grass, like what animal I wanted to go into this animal pen. But as I started filling this in, it suddenly occurred to me that it probably would be really cool to have it be horses. To make it seem like there was some kind of traveling maybe that these villagers do, like as if they travel around and, go different places with these horses. And the horses are not really meant for food, they're meant for travel. I thought that would be just like a really fun addition to the culture behind this village, because I do feel like Mojang really incorporated a lot of culture into each of these villages, and I really wanted to stick with that. So to me, this was the way to go. So we got ourselves a tree, and the tree took a while to grow, but at least it grew. And then we plopped in some horses, and I'm really happy with this pen. I'm glad for how it came out. This house right here that I'm making, this particular house, this is the one that I've been dying for you guys to see. For a lot of different reasons, but the main reason is because it incorporates colors from both the yellow and green houses and the magenta and gray houses. And because it does that, it connects those two color schemes together, so it basically ties all of the buildings in this village together. Because of that, but I also like it because it's a 2-story and it incorporates the granite, and it has all of the major components of this village that make this village this village. And because of that, I'm really proud of this building, but I also feel like it ties everything together. Like I said, it holds the village together, this one specific building. And it was at this point where I was starting to feel really confident about this whole project that I was doing, and it was this building that really made me think, you know what, I actually am doing this right for once. I'm actually building a village right, and I actually want people to see this. Because there's a lot of stuff that I build that you guys, never get to see, and will never see, because, 99% of those worlds of things that I build, I end up deleting. But, this was the thing that made me think, yeah, I definitely need to show this to people. So this one I'm immensely proud of. I love this building so much. I think it just it does what I needed it to do. So the roof was a little bit of a challenge for me to think of. And not a huge challenge, just a little bit of a challenge, but I went with the triangular roof. I didn't want this one to have the same kind of roof as the building right across from it, or the Stonemason building, because then it would be too much in one area. And I didn't want that to happen. I wanted this to look as vanilla as possible. And the way this was going to look vanilla is if, everything was varied a little bit, but was also a bit cluttered and a bit awkward in a good way. If it was organized, it really was not going to look right. And surprisingly, I actually hated that. Even though it looked okay, I really did hate it. And I decided to go with something a little bit different. So, there goes with that, lantern style, and I like the chains. I just think they look good. So in any case, the trapdoors are something that got incorporated. I really liked having that there, but I didn't want to do too much of it, because you can definitely do too much with trapdoor window shutters. So I really wanted to hold back a little bit with that. And I was actually fine with the way that looked right there. Normally I would kind of try to have it be symmetrical on both sides of the house, but I decided not to do that and then do this, little awning thing instead. And I'm really happy with this house. I think it's very vanilla looking. And I love it. it's really vanilla looking without being too silly in a sense. You know what I mean? Like sometimes vanilla houses can look kind of silly, and this is not silly looking to me. This looks good, so I'm happy with it. Alright, so we are working with a slightly different palette than the palettes that you've seen for other buildings, and the reason why we're doing that is because this is the church. And at the time when I made this, I really felt like the modular style had to stay the same, but the colors needed to be a little bit different. And I still feel that way. I'm really happy with this building, and I'm very comfortable with the way that it looks because it is very churchy looking. I mean, it is very churchy looking. And for me, that's quite interesting because I'm not a religious person, so I'm not really sure how I made something look so churchy, but somehow I managed to do that. So, in any case, this building also, just like the two-story building that I built over there, it still fits into the style of this whole village and what I envisioned a Mesa village to look like, but it also fits into the classic Minecraft village style of that, L-shaped building and very basic. And I was okay with that as well. I did kind of want it to have that classic look. I think it's okay to have a classic look mixed in with the new look because, when you're building something creative, you can get your ideas from anywhere. Everything can be inspirational in a sense when you're building something. So, to me, this was fine. And it is very close to the other buildings, which is fine, again, because Minecraft vanilla villages tend to be very cluttered, so, that was how I went about it, but I do like this very much. I'm very happy with it. I had a little bit of struggle with the roof for the second and first story, or the second floor and the first floor. I had a little bit of a struggle here with this. It was very hard for me to figure out how I wanted it to be. I didn't want it to be over-stylized or, overly organized in the way it was built because then it would not really fit vanilla, so I teetered back and forth with what I wanted to do here. But I am very happy with it, still. And, in the end, I just did this, and it was fine. So, yeah, there we go. That's basically the church, and that was it. It was probably one of the easiest buildings to build once I had this whole style figured out. And I still went with this, the awning. I still did. And I think it looks fine. So there we go. There is another component to this church that I will be building soon, though, which I'm quite happy with, and I think really makes this church stand out in this village quite a bit. So here comes the butcher. And this was a building that I had a lot of fun designing, but it was a building that I also had to keep in mind as getting right. Because there were certain things that were really important to designing this. One of them being, I wanted it to have distinctive features that made it the butcher. And those distinctive features also had to fit into the modular style of every building in this village, while still making it unique. Because one thing to note about the vanilla Minecraft villages is they all have a modular style and they all have something that makes each building unique to that village. So the butcher in every single vanilla Minecraft village is going to look like the butcher. And it's not really going to share characteristics with other buildings beyond that modular style. So I knew I had to get this right. Otherwise, it was going to go downhill really quickly. And I did get it right, I feel like. But you guys can tell me in the comment section if you think I got it right. Or if you think I got it wrong. It's okay to say that. It really is. I would love to know what you guys would do differently if you think this should have been done differently. Because that's okay too. It's okay for us to share our ideas. So in any case, I went with the magenta hardened clay and the yellow hardened clay, and I really liked this combination because I felt like this combo made this the butcher. Because again, even though it fits into that modular style, it is the butcher house because it has these two colors together. And yes, I really did put a window up against a hillside and leave it that way because, again, this is supposed to be vanilla. So that's why that looks like that. And then I realized, oh, I forgot to put in the magenta, so I put in the magenta. And it's the same styling as the other houses, just different colors. And I really like it. I really do. I'm very, very happy with this building. I really am. It's something that I just really like a lot. And I like the open space of it. There will be an animal pen attached to the side to kind of keep with the whole classic and new school feel that this has, while also, keeping everything cohesive and making things look like they're functional. So that was what I did with this. And this was a point in time when I just took a moment to kind of sit and think about it. I was like, you know what? This is going to be cluttered, but that's okay because Minecraft villages are cluttered, so it's fine. It's totally okay. I added in this central beam, and then I added in these yellow walls right here, and I'm really happy with the styling of this. I did try a few other things to stylize this more, but in the end I decided that, less is more, basically keep it simple and leave it at that. So, that awning that we've seen like 1,000 times with the other buildings, I added that in. Then I tried to do this thing with the sandstone with having this like cross beam of sandstone, and I felt like it was just too much sandstone and it didn't last much longer than that. Like, I got rid of it pretty quick because it just did not look right. And the windows, I liked that. I liked having those two adorable little windows right there. I thought they were just so cute. And, I kind of wanted to just not have that window be blocked at that point, though, and I removed it. And I also fixed, the missing magenta that was right here. So, yeah, I rescued the window. Just, there was a part of me that was like, I know this is supposed to be a whole vanilla thing, but I can't leave the window so blocked. I just feel bad about doing that. So, I fix it, and I think it's fine. I think I made it look vanilla enough. And I didn't put a lot of thought into this animal pen. Like, I did, but I didn't. I think the reason why was because I just wanted to keep it simple at this point. I didn't want to get overly stylized with anything because then it just would not look vanilla. Because vanilla is supposed to be very simplistic. Mojang don't want to put things into the game that could potentially look better than what players would build. Not that what players build isn't amazing, because it is. It's just they don't want their buildings to overshadow what somebody else would build. And I think that's a very good practice or design practice to keep in mind when designing these things. So I kind of tried to keep that same mindset, and again, incorporating all of the other components to this that make this vanilla. I decided it would be really important to keep the farms or, gardens as vanilla as possible. I built up the terrain underneath them so that they would fit more into how things are generated, and I basically left it at that. I also planted potatoes, wheat, and carrots, so this is like an extra lucky village. Vanilla desert villages have this structure here, or something very much like this, and I don't know what this thing is really meant to be or what it's even called, but it exists, and I decided it should exist here too. So in the end, I actually ended up going with a sapling, and I thought that would be like the cutest thing to have, like a sapling in one of these and a cactus in the other, and that's really all that these do. Building the second one was actually a lot easier for me than the first one, because for the first one, I had to look up on Google Images like what this sort of structure actually looks like in a desert village so that I could build it. And once I had the first one built, then the second one was a lot easier because, it was just so simple after that. And this is really the only thing that I think connects this particular village to the vanilla desert village, and that's really it. Now, the well is very simple. It does tie into the town center, and it does tie in to a lot of other things, and I really feel like the town center should probably be the well and not the tree. The more that I think about it since making this whole video, but regardless of that, this is okay for what it is. It's a bit cluttered in this spot, but I guess that's okay. I mean, because, again, we are trying to make this look like vanilla, and, vanilla tends to be a bit cluttered. So there's that. But I would love to know from you guys who are watching this what you would do differently. Would you make this well different? Would you keep it the same? Would you put it in a different place? You're welcome to share those thoughts with me, because that's perfectly fine. It's definitely not the worst thing that I've ever built, so, yeah. One thing that I really wanted to make this village unique in comparison to other villages was to have a graveyard. And I wanted it to be very vanilla looking, like something that Mojang would definitely do, or what I think they would definitely do. And I also wanted it to still be pretty, because gravestones, they are very stylized for a reason. And make it be this feature where you want to come here because you want to see this new, unique feature that sets this village apart from other villages because of this graveyard. And I wanted it to be right next to the church. So, and it's kind of funny because it's also right next to one of the gardens, which is just so funny because it's like, oh, we bury the dead villagers here and they fertilize the garden. Like, that was not what I was thinking, but it actually looks that way. And I think just for, like, humor's sake, if this was added to vanilla, I would really love to see that, where, like, the garden just happens to be next to the graveyard, just for, like, a little bit of humor. And I know it's very morbid, but for me it was a lot of fun. I decided to incorporate the coarse dirt because I felt like that would look the best, but it would also be a feature that you actually see in Mesa. You see coarse dirt kind of all over the place in a sense, or in like a lot of different areas. So I felt like that was also a really important thing to have to tie this into the Mesa village. And I'm not really sure why so much thought was put into a graveyard, but I guess if you're going to put a graveyard in vanilla Minecraft, you might as well put a lot of thought into it, because otherwise, what's the point of having it there? So, yeah, then the dead trees came in, and this whole thing just, like, it became pretty involved at this point. So, there you go. There's the graveyard. To be perfectly honest with all of you, there wasn't a ton of thought that went into the interior spaces of these builds. I mean, the villagers in vanilla live quite simplistically. They have a bed, sometimes a chest, decoration, sometimes no chest. I put way too many chests in this village. Like, rewatching the footage, I've definitely realized that I put in way too many treasure chests, so there's way too much stuff that you can get from this village, and it's a bit of a problem because it's not in keeping with vanilla, but that's okay. We don't get everything right. We get most things right, but not everything, and that's alright. It's fine. It's totally okay. The interior of this build, I really like this the most. I think this just looks like so cool. And definitely out of all of the interiors, this one I feel like is the most cohesive with a butcher, but also the most cohesive with vanilla in a sense, because it's very much vanilla. You've got this kitchen set up right here, and then, I add in the smoker, so we've got the smoker in there. And I'm so happy with the butcher. Like, I really am. And then I decided, okay, this house will be a fisherman, this guy will be a Fletcher. And this guy, like, I don't intended from the very beginning for this particular house to be the cartographer. That was really important to me. Then from that point, I went right over to the church, and I decided that this would be the cleric because the church is always the cleric, so it just makes sense. And so it was at this point when I realized, oh yeah, this is supposed to be the stonemason and have a stone cutter. So I put in the stone cutter, but I left the blast furnace because I was so attached to the blast furnace fireplace and I didn't want to let it go. Next comes the bells and the torchlights. And it was actually really easy for me to decide where these were going to go. I don't really know why it was so easy, but it just was. I think because I wanted them to sort of be just awkwardly placed, like, oh, here's where I could fit one. Oh, here's where I could fit another one. Okay, that just seems to work. And just sort of leave it at that. And I'm overall very happy with the placement of all of these things. I think they work for vanilla Minecraft. They just work. So I feel like especially out in this area, because it was so open, this is probably a place where these torch lights or torch stands would go. And so, one just out there placed awkwardly. And, they do add a bit of safety, but I think things are still just dire enough for these villagers where you would have to defend them. And I'm glad that that is a component that's actually here and somewhat visible, that you should be defending them, especially because I spent a lot of time making this village, so I would like for you guys to defend it and help take care of it after I spent so much time working on it, So, yeah, those are basically all of the areas where I felt that the bells and the torches should go. I enjoyed this project so much, but I think the thing that was so exciting for me was putting the villagers in and watching them take on the professions and actually live in this village and do their thing. Now, they do look like your standard desert villagers, but regardless of that, I was really happy to see them do their thing. And it was at this point when I realized that the cleric could not be the cleric because the brewing stand was on top of this block, which just drives me nuts, but it is what it is. So, yeah, I understand the mechanics behind it, but still, it's kind of annoying. But in any case, yeah, we've got our fisherman, we've got our Fletcher, we've got to put in the cartographer. I really liked having a cartographer in this area. I felt like because the Mesa is kind of adventurous, that it would be really cool to have a cartographer in a Mesa village. So, for some reason I thought that was the door. It's like I built the building and I forgot where the door was. So, yeah, there's two different guys in here, and it's just sort of the way that it is. I guess that's something that could maybe make this building unique, to have the armorer and the mason together in the same house. It was so funny because I reached a point where I was like, I feel like there's a villager that I'm forgetting that I need to put in here. And then I finally remembered that it was the butcher who needed to be placed in their house. So here we go. So while I add in the different treasures, which I honestly feel like are very similar to most vanilla villages, I wanted to talk just a little bit about my final thoughts regarding this project. And overall, I am very happy with it. I do feel like it looks very vanilla. There are certain things about it that definitely set it apart from vanilla in the sense that it's a bit new looking, but not in a modded sense. It's just the block palette is definitely new and different in comparison to other villages. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's something that could definitely be incorporated. I think there are probably a lot of things that could be tweaked. And I'm definitely curious to see what you guys think about this and what you would do in comparison to what I've done here. I'm very curious, what do you think? Do you think that I use the right kinds of blocks? Do you think that the granite should be omitted and replaced with something different? Do you think it's a good idea to use the hardened clay? Or do you think that that's not a good idea? Because one thing that I thought of was, well, if you use the hardened clay, then, what's to stop players from looting the village's blocks? But at the same time, if I used all red sandstone, it would be a really, really red and poorly contrasted village. So the village wouldn't stand out up against the environment if I did it in all sandstone, but there weren't any other types of blocks that I could think of, which could lend to the idea of why there is no Mesa Village in vanilla, because it's really hard to choose a block palette for it. But regardless of that, like I said, I am very curious what you guys think. Do you agree with what I'm saying about the block palette? Do you think that it's fine the way it is? Do you think it needs to change, and how do you think it needs to change? And that's sort of the point, too, of Build Plus, is for us to talk about these things, like, can this be added to vanilla, and why can it be added? Should it be added? Should it not be added? And continue going down that road. So, yeah, that's what we did. And yes, I did, in fact, incorporate gold into some of these treasure chests because of the gold mines that we have in these Mesa biomes. So I thought that would be a really fun little addition too, to make the Mesa unique in comparison to other villages. Alrighty, so there we have it, folks. This is the Mesa Village as I think it will most likely look if added to vanilla Minecraft. So if you guys have designed your own Mesa Village, feel free to share that with me. My Twitter is linked in the description, where you can always get in touch with me there. I get back to folks as quickly as I possibly can. I check my Twitter every single day. And if you'd like to design some buildings that I have not built here that are kind of in this style, but your own ideas too, you're welcome to share that with me as well. I'm very interested in seeing what you guys have made. I think that would be really fun to make this into like a really big community-wide project. So I want to thank all of you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then feel free to subscribe, comment, and like if you want to see more. And as always, I will see you guys next time.